We have a warning up front about tonight's story. It contains a video that is very hard to watch and may not be suitable for all viewers.
Yeah, it shows a use of force episode in a place we normally don't get to see, inside the Ramsey County Jail. Here's Tom Lydon of the Fox 9 investigators.
In just 3 days, a Ramsey County corrections officer will resign after spending the last 2 years on paid leave. You weren't supposed to know about any of this, nor were you supposed to see the video you will see tonight. A handcuffed man strapped to a chair who is kicked and punched by a Ramsey County jailer.
Help me, please, Lord. Please help me, please.
When it comes to the use of force, it's all about where you start the frame.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe up my nose.
The moments you see and the seconds you don't. In the Sally Port of the Ramsey County Jail,
you ain't seen excessive force, you followed. Okay.
A handcuffed man will be kicked and then punched.
Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I'm sorry.
And it's all captured on video from start to finish.
It was torture. That's what I felt like, torture.
Bravo 786.
April 13th, 2016, just before bar close, St. Paul police will get a call to the former Wild Onion nightclub on Grand Avenue, where a man is suspected of stealing 2 cell phones. In the parking lot, police arrest 24-year-old Terrell Wilson. He's 5'7", 180 pounds, but nothing about this arrest will go easy. He will be dragged to the squad car and pepper sprayed.
Wake up my face! Wake up my face!
Wilson will complain repeatedly that he can't breathe.
Please, Lord. Ah! Help me! I can't breathe. Okay. Oh God. Okay. I can't breathe.
The St. Paul officers radio ahead to the Ramsey County Jail that they're dropping off an uncooperative suspect.
They don't care about us black people. They don't care about us black people.
When the squad pulls into the Sally Port, 6 jailers are there waiting. One of them will be operating a handheld video camera to document the entire incident. Taking the lead is Corrections Officer Travis Vandewille.
If you don't get up, I'm going to drag you.
As he slowly gets out of the squad, Wilson is still spitting out pepper spray. A spit guard will be placed over his mouth. Wilson is on the ground, still handcuffed behind his back, his pants below his knees.
Sit back up on the chair.
The 5 deputies will have their hands full getting him strapped into a transport chair, a device they'll later admit they were unfamiliar with.
He doesn't sit back, his paint lines on.
Wilson is asked repeatedly to sit back in the chair, yet he's handcuffed behind his back. Now, watch Officer Vandewille.
Sit down! I'm sick! I'm sick! Don't hit me with my knee!
Vandewille knees Wilson twice in the abdomen and then goes back to applying pressure behind Wilson's jaw, a pressure point known in police training as the mandibular angle.
That's how it's
Not very nice, sir.
Watch and listen again to Officer Vandewille.
You ain't seen excessive force, you followed.
He delivers 4 punches to Wilson's abdomen.
Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I'm sorry.
Stop fighting.
I will.
Stop fighting, and we'll stop using force against you.
Next, the deputies will fold him over as Wilson claims he's suffocating.
Stop fighting.
Meanwhile, the deputies are still struggling to strap his legs to the chair.
You can't get any tighter.
By this point, there is blood coming from Wilson's spit guard. He appears to be losing consciousness as he begins to pray.
God will let me go. God will not let me go.
Wilson is taken to a holding cell. From start to finish, it's taken 13 excruciating minutes. And despite his protests, he doesn't receive medical attention. He's left alone in a cell, facing the wall.
When he's cooperative enough, we'll get the nurse to check on him, too.
Wilson spent 3 weeks in jail. Today, he lives in Spooner, Wisconsin. He was unaware there was a video of the incident until we showed it to him.
Like, it was so much pain. I've never been through that much pain ever.
They keep saying, sit back in your chair.
They wanted me to do things that was impossible. They wanted me to sit on my hands. I was in handcuffs in the back of a chair, pushing my neck fully back, dislocating. It's just...
I thought it was one of the more distressing videos I've seen.
We showed the video to 3 nationally recognized use of force experts who told us Wilson may have been passively resisting, but he never appears combative and certainly wasn't a threat.
This wasn't about pain compliance. This wasn't trying to get somebody under control. This was violence perpetrated by a police deputy.
To the experts, it also looks like the jailers are working at cross purposes, simultaneously pushing Wilson out of the chair while trying to get him to sit back.
When that happens, because of a lack of communication between officers, the perception of resistance can result in uses of force, even though there is no actual resistance.
Mr. Wilson cannot comply. Well, he's trying to comply, but he can't comply when 4 or 5 different things are being done to him.
But they say the most dangerous moment is when Wilson's head is forced down while wearing a spit mask and still feeling the effects of pepper spray.
And that's not resisting, as they're trying to breathe. They liken it to a person that's drowning.
All of those things together can potentially inhibit someone's breathing.
And there's certain things you can't do anymore that you used to be able to do, and because people were dying in custody by these techniques.
Vanderwilly is no stranger to a takedown. He's also a high school wrestling coach. And for the last 2 years, he's been on paid administrative leave from the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, collecting $121,000 in salary. Through an attorney, he declined to comment for this story.
This case has dragged on for nearly 3 years. It's been the hot potato pass from one sheriff to another. The incident itself actually happened under Sheriff Matt Bostrom. Sheriff Jack Serrier actually tried to fire Vanderwilly, but because Vanderwilly is a former Marine, he was entitled to additional appeals. And now it's landed in the lap of returning Sheriff Bob Fletcher.
And then just last week, as we were investigating this story, Vanderwilly and the county reached a settlement agreement. Effective February 28th, Vanderwilly is allowed to resign from the sheriff's office and gets paid nearly $10,000 for vacation and sick time. And because there's no discipline, the internal affairs investigation is not public. But there was an outside criminal investigation. And from that, we learned of a confidential memorandum written by a supervisor recommending counseling for Officer Vanderwilly, and that Vanderwilly admits the pain compliance methods he was using was the cause of Wilson raising his hips up in his chair. Vanderwilly refused to cooperate with the criminal investigation.
Having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to us now?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
But some of the other officers said they would not have struck Wilson.
I think the biggest problem that you have when you start getting in a striking is the fact that he was handcuffed.
Okay.
That's just my personal opinion.
Is that why you didn't strike him?
Correct.
Okay.
Prosecutors declined to file felony charges of assault or public misconduct against Vanderwilly because they couldn't prove substantial bodily harm beyond a reasonable doubt. Vanderwilly was eventually charged with 5th-degree assault, a misdemeanor. In court documents, his attorney argued Vanderwilly's protected under state law because the correctional officer may enforce obedience and discipline, and that the pain compliance and pressure points were consistent with his training in how to handle an unruly and disobedient inmate. The case was plea bargained to disorderly conduct, a misdemeanor. Vanderwilly paid a $150 fine. As for Terrell Wilson, he is still on probation for the cell phones he denies ever stealing. He moved to Spooner, Wisconsin, he says, to get away from the Twin Cities, and an experience so traumatizing, he's vowed never to end up in jail again.
But in a weird way, it was a blessing. Where I could have lost my life and never been there for my son or my daughter. The things that really mattered. So it was an eye-opener, but at the same time, it was horrible. It was horrible.
The experts we talked to were shocked that no other officers or a supervisor stepped in. They say the message that sends is this may somehow be standard operating procedure. In a statement tonight, Sheriff Fletcher touches on that. He writes,
The events captured on video from 3 years ago are extremely disturbing to me and other members of the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department. The video also demonstrated failed supervision and poor training. The supervisor present and all employees witnessing these actions had a duty to intervene to stop the assaultive tactics and the use of excessive force. He goes on to say the conduct captured on the video will not be tolerated under my watch. Sheriff Fletcher says the supervisor present in that video is no longer with the department. The jail has a new superintendent and additional supervision. Fletcher, who just became sheriff again in January, says he's also reviewed and improved their training protocols.
Tom, back up just a little bit. Why was this officer allowed to resign without discipline? And in the end, who made that decision?
You know, it gets a little complicated, as you imagine. A lot of things in this story are complicated. The county attorney's office hired outside counsel to negotiate the deal. Several people had to sign off on this. Under the Minnesota Veterans Preference Act, he was entitled to a hearing with an arbiter. I am told the risk here was an arbiter could look at that video, look at the training manual, and still somehow side with the officer. It has happened before. Then the sheriff's department would be stuck with him, and that was a risk I'm told they simply did not want to take. By the way, we have a lot more on this story over at the Fox 9 app. We have the entire video. We also have a minute-by-minute analysis from our experts of what went wrong here.
All right, that is some shocking video, that is for sure.
And interesting that you talked to so many use of force experts, too, to get all of their opinions on this.
And we talked to a lot that we did not use on camera, actually, and we even talked to some that usually testify in favor of the officers, and they said they would not take a case like this.
All right. Thanks, Tom.